Hey, fourth graders. First of all, I miss you. We did our teacher parade today, and it was probably the best thing that's happened since we found out that we weren't going to be back at school for quite a long time. I miss all of you so much, and it was so great to see so many of your faces. Not going to lie, I teared up a little bit. I even teared up just seeing other teachers waiting in the parking lot because it's been so long since we've seen other people, and because I just love everybody so much, and so it was so wonderful to see so many of you. I found out, thanks to Madison, that the videos weren't allowing comments, so I'm going to try to figure that out today, but I appreciate that she found all of the definitions of those really tough words and messaged me about the question that I left you hanging with, which was, how has Michael changed and how might this impact the story? She said that she felt like he's losing his hope, and that he started off really wanting to get rescued and get off the island. And now that he's losing his hope, he might just stay in his cave and not light his beacon, not signal to anybody that he's there on the island, even if they were to drive by in a boat. And so then if he sleeps all day and he stays in his cave, then nobody could find him. I'm going to read to you more today. When we left off on Friday, he had said that he had kind of called Kensuke a madman, a captor, his persecutor, kind of making him feel like he's a prisoner on the island and not letting him try to get off. I'm going to read to you today, and while I read to you, I want you thinking about some critical choices that both Kensuke and Michael have made in the story, and what it teaches us about them, what we learn from them, and how it affects the storyline. The weather stayed heavy and humid. How I longed to plunge into the ocean, but I dared not. Remember that last time that I read, Kensuke came screaming at him and dragged him out of the water and told him that it was dangerous to swim. And so that's what he's saying there. He just wanted to go swimming, but he couldn't. He'd be watching me for sure. With every day that passed, in spite of the fish and fruit and water he continued to bring me, I came to hate the old man more and more. Dejected and depressed I may have been, but I was angry too. And gradually this anger fueled in me a new determination to escape. And this determination revived my spirits. Once again, I went on my daily trek up Watch Hill. I began to collect a fresh cachet of dry leaves and twigs from the forest edge and squirreled them away in a deep cleft in the rock so I would always be sure that they were there dry when the time came. My beacon had dried out at last. I built it up higher and higher. When I had done all I could, I sat and waited for the time to come, as I knew it must. Day after day, week after week, I sat up on Watch Hill, my fireglass polished in my pocket, my beacon ready and waiting. As it turned out, when the time did come, I wasn't on Watch Hill at all. One morning, with sleep still in my head, I emerged from my cave, and there it was, a boat! A boat with strange red-brown sails. I supposed it could be some kind of Chinese junk, and not that far out to sea either. Excitement got the better of me. I ran helter-skelter down the beach, shouting and screaming for all I was worth. But I could see at once that it was hopeless. The junk was not that far out to sea, but it was still too far for me to either be seen or heard. I tried to calm myself, tried to think. The fire! Light the fire! I ran all the way up Watch Hill without once stopping, Stella hard on my heels and barking. All around me the forest was cackling and screeching and whooping in protest at the sudden disturbance. I readied my cachet of dry leaves, took my fireglass, and crouched down beside the beacon to light my fire. But I was trembling so much with excitement and exhaustion by now that I could not hold my hand still enough. So I set up a frame of twigs and laid the glass over it just as I had before. And then I sat over it, willing the leaves to smolder. Every time I looked out to sea, the junk was still there, moving slowly away, but still there. It seemed an age, but there was a wisp of smoke, and shortly afterward a glorious, wondrous glow of flame spreading along the edge of one leaf. I bent over it to blow it into life. That was when I saw his feet. I looked up. The old man was standing over me, his eyes full of rage and hurt. He said not one word, but set about stamping out my embryo fire. He snatched up my fire glass and hurled it at the rock below, where it shattered to pieces. Gosh, can you imagine what that would be like? That was his one hope, the one thing that he was able to keep for himself to maybe try to light a fire. And now Kensuke has shattered it. I could only look on and weep as he kicked away my precious pile of dry leaves, as he dismantled my beacon and hurled the sticks and branches one by one down the hill. As he did so, the group of orangutans gathered to watch. Soon nothing whatsoever remained of my beacon. All about me the rock scree was littered with scattered ruins of it. I expected him to screech at me, but he didn't. He spoke very quietly, very deliberately. Damida, he said. But why? I cried. I want to go home. There's a boat. Can't you see? I just want to go home, that's all. Why won't you let me? Why? He stood and stared at me. For a moment I thought I detected just a flicker of understanding. Then he bowed very stiffly at the waist and said, Gomenasai. Gomenasai. Sorry, very sorry. And with that, he left me there and went off back into the forest, followed by the orangutans. I sat there watching the junk until it was nothing but a spot on the horizon, until I could not bear to watch any more. By this time, I had already decided how I could best defy him. I was so enraged that consequences didn't matter to me. Not anymore. With Stella beside me, I headed along the beach, stopped at the boundary line in the sand, and then very deliberately, I stepped over it. As I did so, I let him know precisely what I was doing. Are you watching me, old man? I shouted. Look, I've crossed over. I've crossed over your silly line, and now I'm going to swim. I don't care what you say. I don't care if you don't feed me. You hear me, old man? Then I turned and charged down the beach into the sea. I swam furiously until I was completely exhausted and a long way from the shore. I trod water and thrashed the sea in my fury, making it boil and froth all around me. It's my sea as much as yours, I cried, and I'll swim in it when I like. I saw him then. He appeared suddenly at the edge of the forest. He was shouting something at me, waving his stick. That was the moment I felt it, a searing, stinging pain in the back of my neck, then my back, and my arms too. A large, translucent, white jellyfish was floating right beside me, its tentacles groping at me. I tried to swim away, but it came after me, hunting me. I was stung again, in my foot this time. The agony was immediate and excruciating. It permeated my entire body like one continuous electric shock. I felt my muscles go rigid. I kicked for the shore, but I could not do it. My legs seemed paralyzed, my arms too. I was sinking, and there was nothing I could do about it. I saw the jellyfish, poised for the kill above me now. I screamed and my mouth filled with water. I was choking. I was going to die. I was going to drown. But I didn't care. I just wanted the pain to stop. Death, I knew, would stop it. So I pulled some sticky notes out that I had taken. First, when I'm thinking about critical choice, when he first came to the island, he made a critical choice, Michael did, to help him survive. He decided that he would follow Kensuke's rules for living on the island. He would stay to his side because Kensuke was providing him food. That helped him to live as long as he has lived. Then, in his frustration with Kensuke, he eventually broke the rules and went swimming. What does that decision, that critical choice, teach us about Michael? And even about human nature? When someone makes you mad, or upsets you, and the way that you respond, what does that teach us about Michael and about human nature? My next question is, what's another critical choice that Michael made? And what did it teach us about him? And finally, did Kensuke make any critical choices? What does this teach us about him? Do we think that he really is keeping Michael prisoner? Or is there maybe a bigger reason for him doing all of this? I'm going to read a bit more, but I want you thinking about those questions, and I'll remind you of them at the end of our read aloud. All that silence said. I smelled vinegar and thought I was at home. My father always brought us back fish and chips for supper on Fridays, and he loved to soak his in vinegar. The whole house would stink of it all evening. I opened my eyes. It was dark enough to be evening, but I was not at home. I was in a cave, but not my cave. I could smell smoke, too. I was lying on a sleeping mat, covered in a sheet up to my chin. I tried to sit up to look around me, but I could not move. I tried to turn my neck. I couldn't. I could move nothing except my eyes. I could feel, though. My skin, my whole body throbbed with searing pain, as if I had been scalded all over. I tried to call out, but could barely manage a whisper. Then I remembered the jellyfish. I remembered it all. The old man was bending over me, his hand soothing my forehead. So this means that Michael didn't drown. And it also must have meant that Kensuke somehow went out and rescued him, which teaches us a lot about Kensuke. You better now, he said. My name Kensuke. You better now. I wanted to ask after Stella. She answered for herself by sticking her cold nose into my ear. I do not know for how many days I lay there, drifting in and out of sleep, only that whenever I woke, Kensuke was always there, sitting beside me. He rarely spoke, and I could not speak, but the silence between us said more than words. My erstwhile enemy, my captor, had become my savior. He would lift me to pour fruit juice or warm soup down my throat. He would sponge me down with a cooling water when the pain was so bad that I cried out. He would hold me and sing me softly back to sleep. It was strange. When he sang to me, it was like an echo from the past, of my father's voice, perhaps. I didn't know. Slowly, the pain left me. Tenderly, he nursed me back to life. The day my fingers first moved was the first time I ever saw him smile. When at last I was able to turn my neck, I would watch him as he came and went, as he busied himself around the cave. Stella would often come and lie beside me, her eyes following him too. Every day now I was able to see more of where I was. In comparison with my cave down on the beach, this place was vast. Apart from the roof of the vaulted rock above, you could scarcely have known it was a cave. There was nothing rudimentary about it at all. It looked more like an open-plan house than a cave. A kitchen, a sitting room, studio, bedroom, all in one space. He cooked over a small fire that smoked continuously at the back of the cave, the smoke rising through a small cleft high in the rocks above. A possible reason, I thought, why there were no mosquitoes to bother me. There always seemed to be something hanging from a wooden tripod over the fire, either a blackened pot or what looked like and smelled like long strips of smoked fish. If you're like me right now, you're wondering, why is Kensuke allowed to have a fire, but Michael's not? Does the place that the fire's at matter? Is there just not that much smoke going up through the cave? It gets me curious as to why Kensuke was able to have a fire, but Michael wasn't. I could see the dark gleam of metal pots and pans lined up on a nearby wooden shelf. There were other shelves, too, lined with tins and jars, dozens of them, all sizes and shapes, and hanging beneath them innumerable bunches of dried herbs, flowers. These he would often be mixing or pounding, but I wasn't sure what for. Sometimes he would bring them over to me so that I could smell them. The cave house was sparsely furnished. To one side of the cave mouth stood a low wooden table, barely a foot off the ground. Here he kept his paintbrushes, always neatly laid out, and several more jars and bottles and saucers, too. Kensuke lived and worked almost entirely near the mouth of the cave house, where there was daylight. At night, he would roll out a sleeping mat across the cave from me, up against the far wall. I would wake in the early morning sometimes and just watch him sleeping. He always lay on his back, wrapped in his sheet, never moved a muscle. Kensuke would spend many hours of the day kneeling at the table and painting. He painted on large shells, but, much to my disappointment, he never showed me what he had done. Indeed, he rarely seemed pleased with his work, for just as soon as he had finished it, he would usually wash off what he had done and start again. At the far side of the cave mouth was a long workbench, and hanging above it an array of tools, saws, hammers, chisels, all sorts. And beyond the workbench were 3 large wooden chests, in which he would frequently rummage around for a shell, perhaps, or a clean sheet. We had clean sheets every night. Inside the cave, he wore a wraparound bathrobe, a kimono as I later knew it to be. He kept the cave house immaculately clean, sweeping it down once a day at least. There was a large bowl of water just inside the cave mouth. Every time he came in, he would wash his feet and dry them before stepping inside. The floor was entirely covered with mats made of woven rushes, like our sleeping mats. And everywhere, all around the cave, to head height and above, the walls were lined with bamboo. It was simple, but it was a home. There was no clutter. Everything had its place and its purpose. Are you wondering where all of this stuff came from? He's on an island by himself. There's no boat there. It's not like he built a hotel there or got dropped off there. So why does he have tools and pots and pans? Where's all of this coming from? And sheets. None of that is stuff that you can make from nature. So where does he have all of this from? All right, that's all for today. I want you thinking about those questions that I asked you, and I'll ask them for you again. What does Michael's decision to go swimming and jump over the boundary line, what does that teach us about Michael and about human nature when somebody wrongs us? What's another critical choice that Michael made, and what has it taught us about him? And finally, did Kensuke make any critical choices, and what does that teach us about him? Hopefully we can get some of these responses on our YouTube page. Go ahead and try to comment below, and if not, just email me and I'll give you a shout out like I did to Madison. I miss you guys, and I hope you enjoyed today's Read Aloud. Bye.